and welcome to the fifth day of this program, this event. In the last 4 days, we have discussed and dealt with different countries and different aspects of cooperation among the BRIC countries, and also in general about Russia, something very useful about Brazil, and about, of course, Russia-China relations. Today, on the last day, in the sense that tomorrow will be the concluding session, followed by distribution of certificates. So before that, on the last day, we are here to discuss, some would say, the most critical and essential component of this event, this program, which is Russia-India relations. In order to discuss this interesting topic, relevant for all of us, we have two experts. One, of course, is our good old professor from Russia, Professor Alexander Nikulin. And the next speaker is Professor Rajan Kumar, who is from my center, my colleague in the Center for Russian and Central Asian Studies. He teaches Russian foreign policy, Russian politics, and those of you who regularly watch BBC or Lullantrop would know that he's often there discussing myriad issues, most importantly, those relating to Russia and the recent Ukraine war. I'm sometimes on the TV. He is at least 2 or 3 times more than me, so you all know him. I'm very confident, I'm very sure. So we will begin with Professor Nikulin. And about Russia-India relation, of course, as our Prime Minister 10 years back said during his first meeting with the Russian President, he said, every child in India knows that Russia is our most trusted friend. So that captures the essence of this relationship. In my presentation, I mentioned another very important statement, which many of you might not have heard about. And that was made by Jawaharlal Nehru, the first Prime Minister, during his first visit to Russia, which was in 1927. And this was, 10 years of Bolshevik Revolution were being celebrated. He visited around that time. And he said that for many countries in the world, Russia inspires awe and fear. But for many, many others, including we in India, Russia is seen with hope that the future of a decolonized world and the future of maybe humanity, somewhere or the other, is linked to what is happening in Soviet Union, in Russia. So we have these two views by two prime ministers of India about Russia, about its significance, its historic role, and also about the importance of India-Russia relations. So with this, Professor Nikulin.
Thank you. I'm glad to see you again, my dear friends, colleagues. Today our lection about interrelations between Russia and India. You should remember my plan for previous lectures. First part, it's some statistics inside BRIC countries. Second part, some attempt to analyze regional features of Brazil and China in comparison with Russia. And the third part, my own field experience, my information about my field trip in Brazil and China. But now it's not possible for me to maintain this plan. Of course, I prepared first part about statistics concerning Russia and India in BRICS, but I can't find any regional similarities between India and Russia, and how it's possible to find Russian, Indian, Amazonia, Siberia, or Manchuria. We are so different countries, and it's the first problem. The second problem, I had not had my own field experience from India at all, and especially Indian countryside. And in this case, it's so difficult to think, to analyze features of Indian society. But I think that this way of this lecture, okay, I'll prepare first part about statistics, but the second and third part, it will be description of Russian understanding of India. Some key, first of all, cultural, but also sometimes political, economic factors. What Russians think about India, what Russians know about India in historical context, and some maybe newest trends, events. I think that your teachers, your professors know very well these key factors in India-Russia relations, but maybe for young generations, it might be something new. My description, key cultural political factors of Russian-Indian relations. So let's start. Firstly, statistics. India is the world's fifth largest economy by GDP and has the largest population. But it's true. It's cheap intellectual resources in comparison with Russian, for example, intellectual resources. You see dynamics of GDP. And some main information about India. So it's space 3.3 million square kilometers. It's seventh place in the world. Yes, India is a very big country in the world. Population is the biggest, is the largest, 1.4 billion people, first place in the world. And also in GDP, it's first place in the world. So second place in the world. So it's a very powerful country with great future, I suppose. You see main sectors of GDP India in 2022. You see the meaning of agriculture, 17% of agriculture. For example, in Russia case, it's only 4.5. Very big service sector and also very powerful industrial production. In 2022, India's foreign trade will be based on mineral fuels and machinery and transport equipment. So you see India's import structure in 2022 and India's export structure 2022. Of course, India import mineral fuels and lubricants, and of course from Russia. Machinery and transport equipment, and also chemicals. Main branches export also some mineral fuels, machinery, chemicals, textiles, and in a whole concerning India's import, we can say that India is developing agro-industrial country with a developed industry, with high IT technologies level. Key importing countries are China, 40%, also, for example, USA, 7%, and Saudi Arabia, 6%. Main characteristics of India's export. India's export were dominated by mining and industrial products. India's top export destination in 2022, where the US was 80%, China 5%. The BRICS countries account for 19% and 37% of exports and imports respectively, with China accounting for the largest share. Again, China was first in Russian import-export relations, Brazilian export-import relations, and in Indian case also. But you see this share, China share in India foreign trade is less than in a Russian case and in Brazilian case. We have also very strong trade relations. I mean, we, Russia and India, you see Fiji's 11% and 15%. And also strong relations with Brazil, the third partner of BRICS. So in a whole, export of India to BRICS countries is 19%, and import it's about 37%. In 2022, India mainly supplied Russia with medicine and nuclear reactors. You see dynamics of export from India to Russia in $1 billion. It's relatively high level, and some characteristics of export structure in 2022. Of course, on the first place is medicine, chemical, nuclear elements, electric machines, IT technologists. Concerning machines, of course, it's also some military service and military products, fish, tea products. So it's the main products of export-import relations between India and Russia. The main goods supplied from Russia to India in 2022, petroleum first of all, coal and fertilizers. You see also the key products in these trade relations. And you see the growth is booming in 2022. Of course, after the European sanctions, it was redistributed the trade of Russia in relations with India. Main products from Russia, you see, it's mineral products, first of all, oil, also some metals, chemicals, and also some jewelry. So it's formal statistic characteristics, main features India in BRICS, and interrelations between Russia and India. Again, you know, this Bank BRICS, and Bank BRICS maintain for each country a special line of programs. You see, for India, it's mainly finance various projects in the field of transport and infrastructure. Key projects in India financed by the New Development Bank. In 2022-2023, firstly, at transport infrastructure. Project name, Sustainable Low Carbon Rail Infrastructure Program. Project goal, increasing the share of rail transport, reducing dependency on diesel road traffic, and reducing the carbon footprint of the rail sector through the electrification of traction. Second big project, again, transport infrastructure. Chennai Metro Project. Construction of 3 metro railway corridors with a total route length of about 190.6 kilometers. And third, Bihar Rural Road, to provide first road connectivity to over 7,000 rural villages and connect them with 860 social, economic, and educational centers in Bihar. And the second and third part of my presentation, ideologies and symbols of the development of India-Russian relations. A view from Russia, a view from point of view from Russia. And I start with first description of first Russian who visited India in 15th century. This person is very popular in Russian culture. His name Russian Christopher Columbus or Vasco da Gama. He was a merchant from Tver city, and he undertook amazing journey, amazing trip. His name Afanasy Nikitin. We don't know when he was born. He died in 47-5. He was a Russian merchant from Tver city. It's near Moscow. And one of the first Europeans travel and document his visit to India. He described his trip in a narrative known as a journey beyond the 3 seas. During 6 years, he undertook this journey, and his manuscript is his diary of his trip. You see this road from Moscow, Nizhny Novgorod, Kazan, Volga River, Caspian Sea, Iran, some Arabian countries in Arabian Peninsula, and finally he arrived in India. In this time, I think it was composition of different small and big kingdoms of India, and he's a very popular person. I think Russia has 3 or 4 monuments in different cities. His streets have named of Afanasy Nikitin. Wonderful, by the way, alcohol, beer. Afanasy Nikitin is also very popular. And also Afanasy Nikitin is a symbol of Russian-Indian friendship. In 1975 year, it was made historical feature film. It was the first joint India-Soviet film, first joint Indian-Soviet film project. It was some story of this journey, and this is one of the fragment of this film. Film maybe maybe a little bit naive, romantic. He fall in love in India. It was not written in his book, but it's some fantasy of filmmakers. And it's interesting. We discussed the problem of identity and some international competition between countries. And Russian insisted that among Europeans, Afanasy Nikitin was the first who reached India and who gave a full description of this country. And later only Vasco da Gama and other representatives from Europe reached India. And interesting that most part of diary of Afanasy Nikitin diary was devoted to India, and he described India with great sympathy. So and interesting is the story of this document. After returning to Tver, Afanasy Nikitin died, and his manuscript was confiscated by Moscow bureaucracy. They analyzed this document. It was very interesting socio-economic description, and after that it was lost in Moscow archives. And only 3 centuries later, famous Russian historian and thinker Nikolai Karamzin found this document. He published this document, and he insisted that about Russian priority in open Indian culture, medieval India for Europeans. The second famous example, it's, I think all Russian knows, is history of correspondence between Leo Tolstoy and Mahatma Gandhi. In the end of his life, in 1909, Leo Tolstoy had the letter from one South African lawyer, Indian lawyer, who wrote him about idea of peaceful coexistence, about ideas of a non-violent struggle against devil. So it was interesting that Tolstoy answered immediately his new correspondent, and during 1 year it was written few letters between Leo Tolstoy and Mahatma Gandhi, and the last letter from Leo Tolstoy Gandhi found after the death Leo Tolstoy, and one of the last letters at all in his life Tolstoy wrote to Mahatma Gandhi. Gandhi was very expressed by Leo Tolstoy literature, and especially and especially his ideas how it's possible to combine, how it's possible to rethink main religious and philosophical system. Tolstoy wrote a lot about Buddhism, about Hinduism in comparison with Christianity, and Gandhi stressed also that he understood Christianity through the lens, through the books of Leo Tolstoy. And after the death of Leo Tolstoy, Gandhi maintained friendly relations with followers of Leo Tolstoy in Russia and with Leo Tolstoy family. The third famous example, it's the life Nikolaus Rerich. It's his great famous painter. After revolution, he emigrated firstly in Europe, then in the United States. He was very famous. He was very popular in that period in 1920s. He was very popular among also American elite. It was established special museum of Nikolai Rerich in 1920s in New York. In that period, he was friend of Henry Wallace in the beginning of 1930s, when President Roosevelt was the leader of the United States, and his state secretary was Henry Wallace. And in the end of 1920s and during 1930s, he undertook some trips in Asia. And Rerich traveled a lot in China, in Mongolia, and also in India. He decided to stay in India. He lived in Himalaya. First of all, he is a great painter, but also he was a famous thinker. He and his wife wrote also some philosophical books about peaceful paths of development of the world, how it's possible to reach peace through some cultural project. And Rerich is very interesting, not only as a painter, but also as a diplomat, I suppose. British historian Eric Hobsbawm described period between two world wars as an age of catastrophe. And in this period of catastrophe, Rerich tried to create a peaceful diplomacy policy between main great power in center of Asia, between Soviet Union, United States, China, India. Some people who share conspiracy theories suppose that he was a spy, but it's not clear. Spy of which country? Some insisted he was American spy. Some insisted he was OGPU, Soviet spy. But I personally, I don't believe seriously in this version concerning his spy activity. He was able to find common language with different political powers of his time. And you see, in the end of his life, he was visited in Himalaya with Jawaharlal Nehru and young Indira Gandhi. And here the son of Nikolai Rerich. Nikolai Rerich is very popular in Russia, not only as a famous painter. In the center of Moscow, it's possible to find special museum of Nikolai Rerich, but also as an activist of Russian-Indian friendship. He wrote a lot about union of India and Russia in philosophical context and in future perspective. What else? Of course, Russians knows some examples, Indian religious and philosophical systems. They are very popular in Russia. in many different ways. And I mentioned you about phenomenon of eco-villages. And many members of these eco-villages are inspired by different religious cult of India, Hinduism, Buddhism, Krishnaism, some new cults, and sometimes it's possible to find new India guru on post-Soviet spaces. And in Russia, I met one religious woman prophet in Central Siberia from India. He found some holy place near Okunova Lake, and immediately was a lot of followers, Russian followers, and now it exists a special Indian cult in the center of Siberia, some small local cult. And it's also so popular among some Russians to talk, to read famous religious and philosophical, especially ancient texts. Yoga. Yoga is very popular. Yoga was very popular during late Soviet period. It was semi-forbidden officially because Soviet power tried again in any religious, and yoga was also some symbol of India religious, but it was possible to avoid repression, insisting that yoga is only system of sport, it's useful for health. As a result, many Soviet citizens practiced yoga, and for example, my father, he was an engineer, and he spent about 3 years with special book about yoga in Soviet time, and it was interesting, strange for me to observe his yoga exercises. Now it's very popular in Russia, and you can find a lot of special clubs, special courses, not only in Moscow, for example, in big cities, but in middle town. It's possible to find special courses in yoga. I don't know what is quality of these yoga courses, because most of these teachers are Russians who trained in India, who visited India. But it's possible to say, yes, it's also some sort of mass activism in contemporary Russia, especially among young generations. You know, young generations with their preferences in wealthy style of life. And yoga, of course, is also a great symbol of India among Russians. But of course, we can think not only about some spiritual, religious, philosophical system and heroes. Among common people, I think that the main trademark and symbol of India, it's of course tea and coffee. I'll give you example trademarks from Soviet period, so-called chai indiyskiy. It was the best tea. It was the best tea in that time in Soviet Union, and also it was very popular Indian instant coffee. It was some sort of deficit. It was not so easy in Soviet period to buy this coffee, and sometimes it was some sort of informal barter to change this coffee, some also another deficit products. Of course, now it's possible to find any sorts of tea and coffee in in Russian shops, but I suppose that Indian tea and coffee also have a very good reputation in contemporary Russia. And since Soviet times, of course, Indian movies and some hits of this period, films with Raj Kapoor, and this movie was so popular since 1950s. In 1980s, it was another hit, Disco Dancers, with Indian music, with Indian film heroes. You know, we said some proverb and some unexpected story. Russian says it looks like Indian movie. Now we have one of the central TV channel that 24 hours you can watch contemporary Bollywood films. But of course now it's not easy for Indians movie competes with other newest Asian movie producers like Chinese films, South Korea's films, and especially last year's Turkish movies. Concerning economy, it's also all Russians knows three main symbols of Russian-Indian cooperation. First, it's construction in the end of 1950s Bhilai steel plant. It's so-called symbol of new Indian industry, and I should stress now that in that period Russia, Soviet Union, as the United States were the main steel superpower in the world. Now, if you look at statistics, India produces much more steel than post-Soviet Russia, but Bhilai steel plant exists and is continuing to produce steel. You see Indian and Russian specialists, Indian and Russian engineers. Another famous example of this industrial cooperation of two countries is relatively new example. It's Kudankulam nuclear power plant. One of the biggest and successful Russian state corporation, Rosatom, Ros nuclear state corporation like Gazprom, provides a lot of projects in different countries, and one of the biggest projects is in the south of India. This station was started. It's nuclear power station. It was started about 15 years ago, and now you see two blocks of this power plant. And in period of construction, it's now it's about, I think, about four new blocks of this giant nuclear power plant. The third sector of Russian Indian cooperation, of course, it's weapon. And this is the biggest symbol of military cooperation. Aircraft carrier Vikramaditya, it's the flagship of the Indian Navy. Initially, it was launched as aircraft Baku, one of the capital of former Soviet Union. The work on this aircraft was stopped in the crisis of 1990s, and in the beginning of 21st century, India decided to buy this unfinished aircraft, and he was finished only in 2012, and now it's one of the I think, yes, one of the biggest ships in Indian Navy. And again, you should remember, first steel plant was constructed under support of Soviet Union, and now India has own very powerful steel industry and can construct any steel plant in India and abroad. And the second aircraft of India was produced in India, and in each case you see that firstly was some example of Russian Soviet cooperation in constructing new ambitious industrial project, and after that India was able to provide their own industrial or military path of development. I'll give you only one example. Of course, Russia exported a lot of tanks, aircrafts, and other weapons for India. But concerning peaceful collaboration, of course, many Russians know the Indian students, and especially in medical universities. As I remember statistics, now it's about 24,000 or 25,000 students. It's not so big like in contemporary world in other, first of all, Anglo-Saxon countries. I think the Canada is champion for preparing Indian students. It's more than 300,000 students. After that, the United States. After that, some country of Europe. But among BRICS countries, yes, Russia is the champion, and yes. Indian students visited also China, but I think among BRICS countries, most of Indian students prefer to be students in Russia. Of course, in this cooperation, we can find some problems. I mean, first of all, the problem of language. Russian language is difficult, and the world prefer speaking English. So it's some difficult for Indian students to learn Russian, and returning to India to get special certificate about the medicine professionalism, about the medicine ability, using special exam in English Indian standards. But in any case, it's also a wonderful example of our collaboration. And some surprise in the end of my election, I decided to show you some small field trip, but not mine, but my colleague, Professor Sudhir Kumar. It was about 2 years ago, not 2 years, 1.5 years ago. We decided to organize a special field trip in a small town near Moscow. The distance between this town and Moscow is about 100 kilometers. It's old Russian town Kolomna. It's about 100,000 inhabitants in this city. We decided that it's also interesting story, not largest cities, megapolises in India and Russia, and not only countryside. And we decided that it's not so easy to compare countryside and between our countries. But we have also phenomenon or so-called small town. Kolomna is interesting example of complex territorial development, using the development of this town through different cultural projects. And I think now India overcomes in steel production, maybe in of course in computer industries and in machineries. But I suppose that Russia now one of the leading countries in the development of different historical cultural projects. And Kolomna is one of the good examples. This small town now has about 50 museums, different museums. You see this museum of traditional production of Russian bread, the name of this bread, kalach, and it's a very interesting lecture inside this museum, how it was produced 3 centuries ago. But it's possible to find the Museum of Soap, the Museum of Goose, the Museum of Hard Women Fate. the Музей Бабья Доля. So a special museum about life of women in traditional Russia. We organized a special lecture of Professor Sudhir Kumar for our students Shadenka University. You think this place is so-called creative place. It was former silk fabric, silk production, and we discussed the way of trade way of Silk Road, silk paths between India and Russia in medieval history and in contemporary Russia, and we discussed the problem of development of human capital in provincial areas through development of different cultural projects. So we discuss our plans here in this also historical cafe with the famous faces of Russian culture: Karamzin, Pushkin, Dostoevsky, Chekhov, and so on. Of course, we visited countryside, and again, it's example how it's possible to transfer knowledge, to transfer technology from one country to other country. You see this photo, it's one of the first Soviet tractors on Indian land, famous mark Belarus. Now it's Belarusian production, but it was from a Soviet Union production. And yes, now in Soviet period, the Soviet Union was the leader in world tractor production. Soviet Union produced about 1.5 million tractors per year. And now India is a champion in production of tractors. India produced about 600,000 tractors per year and more. And especially after sanctions from European countries, it's forbidden for Russia to buy famous tractors like John Deere, Fend, Caterpillar, and so on. But now you can see real help from Indian side, and this is a tractor was produced in India, and also it's a symbol of its continuity of our collaboration. Finally, I can mention some surveys in Russia. So it's sociological surveys, and this question for Russian citizens about their opinion about foreign countries. And it's possible to find, of course, the growth antipathy to the United States, to Great Britain, and sometimes it's possible to find some feeling of stress from the China, because some Russian people worried about Far East and power of China. But in any surveys, you find the most friendly relations from Russian to India. And I believe that this wonderful tradition of Indian-Russian, Russian-Indian friendship will continue. Thank you.
So, thank you, Professor Nikulin, for this very informative lecture, in which you basically dealt with various aspects of cooperation between India and Russia, and Soviet role in creation of India's industrial infrastructure. In fact, the foundation of Indo-Soviet cooperation was laid exactly 70 years back, when Nehru visited Russia in 1955, and there was a return visit by Khrushchev and Bulganin, and that laid the foundation of this cooperation. So Bhilai, Bokaro, and Bhel, and Hindustan Aeronautics Limited, Digboi, oil exploration, creation of IIT Mumbai, about which Dhruv Rana talked about yesterday, how there was Cold War geopolitics involved. And this was also the time when, after the first 5-year plan, in the second 5-year plan, under the Mahalanobis model report, India was going for emphasis on creation of industrial infrastructure, big infrastructure, and Soviet Union was the most forthcoming in this regard. Professor Nikulin, why don't you sit down? I'm really sorry, please.
Not at all.
That cooperation continued, and he showed pictures of Kudankulam, how this cooperation, nuclear cooperation, the first foundation of it was, this project was laid way back in late 1980s. Of course, the agreement, some form of agreement was there, but it was much later, 10 years later, that an agreement was signed, and it took time also because US and other countries were sanctioning India. 15, 17, 18 years back, when the so-called 123 agreement, the nuclear agreement between India and US was signed in 2007-8, after that, it really picked up. But despite that agreement, US has still not created any nuclear reactor in India, and Russia has gone ahead. 2 are already there, generating power. 2 more are almost complete, and 2 more are planned. There are other reactors planned somewhere in West Bengal, but the agreement has not yet been finalized. Soviet, Indo-Soviet and Russia-India cooperation in this regard is not often. Whenever, in the last 30, 40 years, 30 years at least, one constant refrain on any discussion about India-Russia ties and cooperation has been the abysmal level or not very significant level of trade and economic cooperation between the two countries. For more than 20 years, the trade between the two countries hovered between 10, 11 billion dollars per year, which was, way much less than, of course, during the Soviet times. Soviet Union used to be one of the major top trade partners of India, and there was rupee-ruble trade arrangement also, which faced some problems after the Soviet disintegration, and that was partly reason for the declining trade between India and Russia. But in the last 2-3 years, we have seen a 4-fold, 5-fold, 6-fold jump, and now the trade is somewhere between 60-65 billion dollars. Of course, 90% of it is accounted by Indian imports, oil imports from Russia. That is coming under scanner under Trump. We don't know what's going to happen. There are various other facets of cooperation which I will not discuss because I don't want to preempt my more capable colleague. But we will take questions and we will discuss this issue before the next session. Yes, and before that, I would like to introduce Dr. Debolina. Debasmita Maulik, who is a friend and academic collaborator of Dr. Nikulin, Professor Nikulin. So she has lived in Russia for very long, and in that sense, she is a real Russian expert. I would like her to make some comments. The mic can be given to her, someone else can give, about your experiences about Russia. You can come here if you,
It's fine from here.
or else you can, and also your
Thank you.
impressions
Thank you.
about Russia. It can be about India-Russia relations. It can also be about Russia. Yes.
Okay. Should I stand or
Yes,
is it?
if possible.
Feel free.
Feel free. Yeah.
Okay,
You can
okay,
keep
yeah.
sitting.
Thank you so much. And such a wonderful initiative. I've been watching the lectures online, all of them. Professor Sudhir has been sharing the link. So uh, have been working in Russia as an advisor for Russia-India bilateral projects in energy, healthcare, and education. So in energy, we track projects in oil, gas, power, water, petrochemical, from feasibility study to commissioning, researching the opportunities for Indian and foreign companies inside those projects. And in education, I'm the advisor for Moscow State Linguistic University. We have an exchange program where Russian students come for internship to India, and Indian final year management students travel for internship to Moscow. About Russia-India cooperation, Professor Nikulin, I mean, he has already said much of it. I would like to add maybe a few more points. Not many European cities have Rabindranath Tagore's statue. In Moscow, we have one where we celebrate his birth anniversary every year, along with Russian academicians, Orientalists who are, great experts in Russian literature and culture. And we have, yesterday, in fact, we were discussing with Professor Nikolin, recollecting rather, there is a very interesting family of sculptors in Moscow. For 3 generations, they have been working on the Indian theme. Daniel Ryabichev, senior sculptor, he has sculpted statues of Mrs. Gandhi and Mahatma Gandhi, which is at the Indian Embassy in Moscow. And his son continues, Alexander Ryabichev, he continues to do the same. And now his daughters, they are also continuing in that direction. So there are families and legacies like this, when generation after generation, they have focused on India, researched India, traveled to India, and studied in depth. The other thing which amazes me all the time is the group of senior Russian Indologists and academicians who know our country so well. Many of them have, traveled to India, studied here, studied our language, studied the country, and they advise us on various projects. What else? What are the others? Of course, our cooperation in the hydrocarbon sector. I think all of you know about it. We are producing oil in the Siberian city of Tomsk for very long. And well, I think pretty much that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Professor Nikulin, for that insightful session. I am particularly interested about the research which you talked about, the historical cultural project in Kologna, if I am not wrong, with Dr. Sudhir. So I have a couple of questions regarding that. You mentioned that the project involved construction of museums, and the museums were very nuanced in the fact that they were also concerned with ordinary activities like wool soap, etc., women also. So I am interested in knowing that apart from the construction of museums, what other initiatives have been taken under this project? Also, is this project entirely government funded and all the work government is doing, or is the public participation also involved? And the last question is that after the commencement of this historical project, how do you think urban areas have evolved? Thank you, sir.
Maybe I'll start.
Yes, we'll start. Yes, maybe.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
Sorry again. I
You want pen?
no, pen I
Good
have,
afternoon,
but
professors.
Paper?
wait, excuse me.
Actually,
It's okay.
I have a concern regarding India-Russia relations
Thank you.
in present
You are
context.
very welcome.
Since
Pardon?
there was a news, am I audible?
Yes, yes.
There was a news regarding US banning almost 400 companies from India, China, and other nations also. Those who were doing their businesses with Russian after the sanction, the post-Ukraine war period. What is the situation right now? How can Russia and India do a win-win amalgamation between each other after this sanction period, since US is very strongly acting on countries who have currently having a relation or having business with Russian companies and likewise. I want to know the current prospect of Russian government. As per you are a national of Russia, and not only the government, how people think that it could be a win-win situation for both the nations. Apart from that, I am also concerned, since I am an Indian, so I am also concerned about the increasing in Russia-Pakistan relations. The relation in which Russia is having a defense cooperation in 2014 with Pakistan. It is supplying Mi-35 helicopters, Sukhoi 35 fighter planes. So Russia is more or less, earlier it was the situation in which Russia was not that much close to Pakistan. It was a second front, as it was already mentioned by Nehru and Russian presidents also, that Russia acts as a second front of India. But the situation is now changing very rapidly. Being an Indian, I'm concerned about this, how this changing dynamics of Russia-Pakistan relation is taking shape and what it could affect the India-Russia relations. Is it the thing? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Aditya from CRCA's research scholar.
One small suggestion, Professor Rajan Kumar may just keep in mind some of the questions that are being raised so that he can address them in his presentation. Yes, Sudhir.
Thank you so much, Professor Nikulin. Unfortunately, when I was looking at these photographs, I was thinking that we should have also taken you out for a field work, which we couldn't do. So, my sincere apologies for that. I have I don't know if I would call it a question, because that's a point which concerns both of us. I mean, Indian academic as well as the Russian academic. In political science, there is a strong branch of scholars emerging arguing that one of the major reasons behind cooperation between various countries is rise of an elite who share certain common political views, economic views, or as Professor Rana was yesterday talking about, views about a scientific community and so on. I believe that what strengthened India-Russia relations to a greater extent owes to this specific class, which had a great deal of commonality between the two countries, and which existed for a very long time. It continues to exist. However, my worry is that there is a stagnation which we are witnessing when it comes to these bilateral ties. We have a continuity of certain sectors where we have clear complementarity, and therefore there is a cooperation which is happening. But I mean, I'm not looking at trade as such as an indicator, but other than trade, I think at the societal level when it comes to interaction with people, interaction between different institutions, or the kind of cultural bonhomie which both countries shared, I think that has come to a standstill. And when we talk about this friendship, I'm really worried that we talk more about history than the present, because we have more to look in the history than perhaps to the future. Though in BRICS we are talking about it, but at the same time, unless we have that, certain commonalities to relate to, what kind of future we are looking at these bilateral relations, I think we need to think about it. Thank you.
Thank you.
We will take up these three questions, Professor Nikulin, and then yes, पहले तीन ही करते हैं.
Okay.
Yes.
We can have a second round also.
Yes, we will.
Thank you. Concerning Kolomna case, it's a very interesting story, and sometimes we suppose it's some sort of Kolomna cultural anomaly. Kolomna was a very strong industrial development town in the end of Soviet era, and Kolomna had strong economic crisis in 1990s. Many industrial plants were closed, destroyed. Kolomna had, for example, the famous rail train production, and it was abandoned. And in the beginning of 20th century, this town has very bad economic and cultural situation. It was poor, muddy, sometimes poor, muddy town with depressive alcohol population, with hooliganism of young generation in the nights, and so on and so on. So, after that, some group of our former students of our Shannon University, we have special faculty cultural industries. They decided to live and to work in Kolomna because they found this great historical and cultural heritage of this city. I did mention, for example, that this city visited Fyodor Dostoevsky, and he wrote about Kolomna, Alexander Chiyanov. This city has own wonderful tradition of some traditional crafts, and so on. They, first of all, they suggested the municipal power, the mayor of that town, to create some special cultural projects. But I don't know how in India. In many cases, not absolutely, but our municipal power is so conservative and don't believe in new creative industries and so. So they were alone. They tried to organize something, and they decided to produce specific apple cookies. It was a special product from Kolomna, and at that time also it was Russian and European championship in Kolomna in фигурное катание. How to say figure skating, yes. Mayor preferred maintain sport, and he constructed new stadium for figure skating, and it was some event, famous event, not only concerning Kolomna, but what is some sort of international event. And for dear guests, it was problem. What it's possible to surprise foreign guests and high bureaucracy from Moscow. Thank you. And it was good luck for these ideas, traditional cookies that was created by this team. They presented this tradition Apple cookies for guests of this championship. And after that, local power, municipal power decided also to maintain this project of cultural development. But long period, during many years, this creative curators of museum passes of Kolomna were alone. Local citizens didn't believe in this project. They suppose they are some strangers from Moscow. And it's typical situation in many provincial towns in Russia. I suppose not only in Russia, that provincial public opinion is so conservative, don't believe in new ideas. But after 3-5 successful projects, it was possible to have some grant support from some Central Russian grant foundation, and it was long, difficult story of step-by-step success of this very creative group. And only 10 years later, municipal power and citizen of Kolomna maintained this idea of complex museum development of Kolomna. Now museums Kolomna are also very popular place for Kolomna citizens and also for Moscow, right? It's 100 kilometers, it's not so long distance. Using car and buses, and a lot of visitors from Moscow, from other cities and towns of country now are tourists in Kolomna. Kolomna has their own, I didn't demonstrate it, own Kremlin, I mean old fortress. So in any case, I think when you start your cultural project in a small provincial town in the United States, in Russia, maybe in India, you will overcome some negative reactions, sometimes skepticism concerning your new creative ideas. So it was a long story of final success. Okay. Next question. The meaning of sanction and the influence on Russian-Indian business. Of course, it's a difficult topic. I'm not a businessman, but I had some conversation with representative of Russian business who works with Indian business, and they stressed, yes, that it's dangerous. It's not easy to develop economic relations between two countries in these conditions. Concerning again agrarian industry, some Russian businessmen stress that it's not possible to organize tractor production in Russia, in Indian tractor production in contemporary situation. It was launched one small tractor plant before COVID, before sanction, and this Indian-Russian plant produced some tractors, but other projects, other tractor projects is not easy realized in contemporary political and economic situation. Another problem for development of Russian Indian business, of course, it's a problem of logistics. Our countries are the neighbors in Asia, but we don't have good roads between our countries, and in this case we can use ships or different variant of long railway passes through many Central Asia countries. And many Russian businessmen stressed that the main problem, especially, for example, in agrarian export, it's the problem of logistic long way between our countries. The question about Russian-Pakistan relations. Mm, I think that Russian policy in Indian-Pakistan conflicts was the policy of neutrality, but we can find some features in neutrality. I mean, you can find absolute neutrality and friendly neutrality. In case of India, I suppose it was friendly neutrality. In case of Pakistan, it was simple neutrality during many decades. And by the way, you should remember also about very bad relations between between Soviet Union and Pakistan during Afghan War, when Soviet army was in Afghanistan, and it was constantly conflict between Afghanistan and Pakistan, and it was period of serious political troubles between Soviet Union and Pakistan. Now Russia again try to use this policy of friendship between two great states, between Pakistan and Afghanistan. Yes, I know that Russia sold some also aircraft and, as I remember, helicopters to Pakistan, and Pakistan last years demonstrated friendly relations to Russia, and especially if you remember, it was starting of Ukrainian-Russian conflict, and some attempt to demonstrate friendly neutrality from Pakistan to Russia. But I think in long term perspective of diplomatic relations between Russia and Pakistan, between Russia and India, of course, Russia will use this the position of neutrality, more friendly neutrality to India, less neutrality to Pakistan. I think it's main general tendency in the relation between Russia, Pakistan, and India. And the fourth, yes, it's very bitter question from Professor Sudhir Kumar concerning elites, the role elites in constructing of interrelations between different countries. Of course, in previous era, in the middle of 20th century, Indian elite and Soviet elites shared a lot of common aims, and the level of cooperation between intellectual elites and the political elites was very high. Now, of course, we can see that newest Indian elites more oriented on Anglo-Saxon world, and of course statistics of students from India in American, Canadian, German universities is much higher than statistics in the countries of former Soviet Union. But you know, dear Sudhir, and our aim, our meeting, your project in Kolomna, my visit to Delhi, it's revitalize our Russian-Indian relations, to find new impulses, new ideas for collaboration of India and Russia at whole, and especially to give some new advices for our elites.
Maybe add something. In the meantime, you can ask. Now, something about maybe we have to carry. So, something about Russia, Pakistan. Well, first, Russia has only sold helicopters, and only 4 of them, I believe. not many. Russia has built one gas pipeline. They have conducted a few military exercises, that's all. But then there is a very long history to Soviet Pakistan and Russia Pakistan engagement. It's not very new. I mean, it was way back in 1949 that Liaquat Ali Khan got an invitation from the Soviet Union to visit Moscow. Of course, he showed it to the Americans and he got one invitation from US and he went there in 1954. They signed an agreement. But then during 1960s also, Russia and Pakistan, Soviet Union, tried to mend their relations. In fact, during the 65 India-Pakistan war, Soviet Union took a neutral stance and played the mediator. That means that they had some, even Pakistan trusted them. So Tashkent summit was held. Even at that time, there were proposals for supply of some defense equipments from Soviet Union to Pakistan, which did not happen. By the end of that decade, 1960s, India-Soviet relations were already on the swing. Soviet-China ties were deteriorating, and 69 clashes, I've mentioned that, 71, we have this agreement. So it's not new. Again, in 1980s, during Perestroika, during Gorbachev's new political thinking on foreign policy, he traveled to India, by the way. Rajiv Gandhi and Gorbachev signed one agreement about nuclear disarmament worldwide, and they issued a statement. The first, not agreement, but talk about Kudankulam also started during that time. But Gorbachev was trying to improve relations with countries across the board, in which Pakistan also featured and figured. During the last 2 years of the Soviet Union, there were again attempts to mend fences. For a time, in one of the UN sessions, Russia, in fact, supported Pakistani proposal for a nuclear weapon-free zone in South Asia, which India was not keen about, because India thought that unless China is denuclearized, there can be no denuclearized South Asia. So there has been a long history. I will not touch upon much of it. Just one more point, and I'm looking at hands. Please raise your hands. I want your questions. I don't want to speak.
Oh, this one.
So, yes. Yes, you may.
Thank you so much.
And please, students.
Just wanted to add that Indian classical music and dance is actively being studied by the young Russians. You will find many dance clubs and schools focusing on Kathak, Bharatnatyam, and particularly Odissi. And some of the young Russian artists have even performed at prestigious platforms like the Khajuraho Dance Festival. The prestigious Moscow Conservatory has been teaching Indian classical music for the last 15 years. And then about cuisine, there are around, I conducted a survey in 2022, there were around 35 Indian restaurants and cafes in Moscow. And a very popular chain of shops called Indijskiye Spetsi, or Indian Spices. It has 5 outlets. It's popular. Russians now know about our spices. They use them. And there is the Oriental Museum in Moscow, which has a beautiful section dedicated to India. And the director, Tatiana Kristoforovna, once I interviewed her, and she said she dreamt of working with India when she was 13. In fact, she showed me a photo when she was 13 wearing a sari. So you can imagine with what passion she runs her museum. And then I have to mention about the Russian Ramayana, which was staged way back during the Soviet days. And Gennady Pechnikov, who acted as Ram, was awarded Padma Shri by the Indian government. And last but not the least, Professor Nikulin mentioned how much the Russians love our Injiski chai, the Indian tea, and the first Indian company to start trading with Russia in 1957 is Tosh and Son, Ashutosh and Sons, Tosh and Sons. So when Yuri Gagarin visited India in 1961, Tosh had gifted him a big chest of Darjeeling tea, the best gift you can give to any Russian. Saglasna?
Sure.
Thank you
right.
so much. ISKCON also, yes.
Yes, there is one hand there, and anyone else? इधर यहाँ आगे
Hello, sir. Sir, my name is Ankit. I am master pass out from PISM. Sir, my question is addressed to Professor Nikulin. Sir, it's been at least 1,000 days to Russia-Ukraine war since the Russia started incorporation of Ukrainian territories. So, sir, as the Russian economy is being militarized, how it has impacted the agrarian structure of the Russia? Do you think that the resources that has been put to enhancement of the Russian agriculture, it has been transferred to Russian manufacturing industry? And also the second question, is there any rural-urban divide after the war?
All right. Anyone else?
Explain.
Yes.
I didn't understand this question.
He wants to know about the impact of rural-urban divide and impact of Ukraine war on Russia's agriculture.
I see.
Yes, sir. My question is on Indian labor. That how was the attitude, Russian attitude for the Indian laborers in Russia?
Just
You
a
have
moment.
Central Asian labor,
Yes.
lots many.
Okay.
So, what about labor from India? So this would be.
Okay.
I suppose.
It's concerning this Russian-Ukrainian tragedy in agrarian context. First of all, I should stress that Donbas is not only territory of high industrial branches, yes, but is also territory for production of the best wheat in the world. I mean a high quality wheat. And the best Italian products, the macaroni, were produced first of all from Donbas wheat. It's serious problem. I mean, agrarian export, of course, for Ukraine, but also for Russia, because it's not now it's dangerous, sometimes dangerous to use ships in Black Sea. It's problem of harbors for export of agrarian production. The main city for export of Russian grain on territory Russia is Novorossiysk, and Novorossiysk sometimes under attack of Ukrainian missiles. Of course, also it's very dangerous for Ukrainian ships and other foreign ships, ports like Odessa, to provide this export of grain. I get some interviews with farmers in Krasnodar region. Krasnodar region is very close near Donbas. And they stressed that they had a meeting with Ukrainian farmers, former Ukrainian farmers, who now so-called Donbas farmers, and now include in the territory of Russian Federation. And it was some sort of conference. Donbas former Ukrainian farmers and Krasnodar farmers, and they discussed business. They discussed perspectives of development of their relations. Donbas farmers stress that it's so strange. One day found them citizens of other state, and they didn't knew what to do in this situation. Russian government organized special programs to support, first of all, Donbas farmers. They were invited to the biggest tractor and combine plant in Rostov-na-Donu city. The name of this famous tractor combine plant, Rostselmash. It was launched in the first year plan, and this is flagman. It's the best tractor combine plant in contemporary Russia and in previous in Soviet period too. So and Donbas farmers visited this plant. They observed different variant of tractors combine that were produced by Russia. In Ukraine, Donbas farmers were really rich, and they used first of all West tractors and West combines. So after this conflict, they reoriented on using Russian tractors and combines by sometimes Chinese or Indian tractors. And Russian farmers stress that these preferences for Donbas farmers, it's some sort of new competition between new Russian citizens of Donbas and old Russian citizens of Krasnodar. And the Russian government tried to provide, first of all, opportunity for Donbas export of wheat, and after that to sell the wheat from other parts of Russia. So some features of current agrarian policy in this region.
About Indian labor.
Yes, it's a very difficult question. I mean that we have different variants of migrants from Asia countries. And most of them now, of course, from Central Asia countries. And in many cases, it's informal processes. Some my colleagues tried to organize special issue, some special sociological field trip in countryside, asking about perspective of migrant laborers, trying to organize deep interview with migrants from Central Asia. And actually, it was not so easy because many migrants worried about their legacy. They don't want to answer on the questions. In many cases, they has problems with official documents, and our migration policy is very bureaucratic. So I don't know if you see if it's so difficult to find this real information about migrants from Central Asia. So it's much more difficult to find this information concerning Indian migrants. But it was mentioned about restaurant. About Indian restaurant, for example. In period Soviet Union, in period of great friendship between Soviet Union and India, I think among all foreign restaurants, Indian restaurants were champions. It was not possible to find in Soviet period before perestroika to find, for example, Chinese restaurant, but now it's this strong competition between different Asian restaurants, and the famous pedestrian street Arbat now, of course, has 2 or 3 Indian restaurants, but also Chinese, Vietnamese, Japanese kitchen. So concerning the labor of Indian migrants, I'm not sure, but I think that they concentrated in big cities, because I think that countryside is occupied more laborers from Central Asian countries. And in many cases, it's difficult case for sociologists because it's sphere of so-called informal economy.
I will just add a few points and then we can disperse. First, Arbat Street. Arbat Street is a combination of Janpat and Dilihat, for those who don't understand. And it's in central Moscow. So it's a place worth visiting. You will find many souvenir shops and many restaurants and such other things. One point about migrants, Indian migrant labor, I mean, the possibility. First thing is that in Central Asia, it is, in Russia, it is much easier for Central Asian migrants to go and work for historical reasons. They were part of the same entity. Many of them know Russian language, are familiar with Russian way of life. There is a long tradition of Central Asian labor. All that is absent in case of India. So in case of India, there is lack of familiarity, lack of information, language problem. Just one point, you mentioned Oriental studies. Now, and in the last few days, we have read and heard about Orientalism. Oriental studies in Russia for the first time started almost more than 200 years back, in 1818, during Tsar Alexander I. It has a long history, of course. Its focus has changed a lot. On the occasion of 100th anniversary, that was 1918, after the Bolshevik Revolution, the entire project got a new focus, because now Oriental studies was also instrumentalized in certain ways by Soviet Union to show that how Russia's understanding and policy towards the East is very different from that of the West, which we know through Edward Said, through Orientalism. In more recent years also, 200th anniversary was celebrated in 2018. In fact, Putin went to Oriental studies. Some new programs were launched, and teaching of Indian languages, not just Hindi, but Bengali, Tamil, and many others is very much there. And if you meet students from the Hindi department of Oriental Studies, you will have difficulty in conversing with, in talking to them, because they will speak such chaste Hindi, Sanskritized Hindi, that you may not be able to follow completely.